Hi guys, and welcome to Horologique. And for those of you who follow the channel, you might remember that a few months back I tested the Cronos Water Ghost against the Saint Martin Water Ghost, and that on most aspects the Saint Martin came on top. So my biggest pet peeve with the Cronos was a QC issue regarding the Cyclops. The Cyclops was not aligned at all. And Cronos were kind enough to accept that I returned the watch, and instead they would send me a watch with the Cyclops aligned. I even asked for them to change the carbon dial that I had first ordered for the blue Smurf version that I have here. So what do I think about this watch? Is it any better than the one that I reviewed 2 months ago, especially with the little tweaks that Cronos have done ever since? Let's find out right away. Okay, let's start with dimensions. And this watch is a 41 in diameter, so a little bit bigger than the 40 that is stated on the site. It has a thickness of 13.1 millimeters. It has a log-to-log of 47.7 millimeters, and endling to endling it is a massive 54 millimeters. And that is pretty big. And even though this watch is the same size as the Saint Martin, this one wears bigger, significantly bigger, because of those very protruding endlings. The log width is at 20 millimeters, and the bracelet tapers from 20 to 16 millimeters and back to 18 at the clasp. Let's talk about that dial, and let me tell you, from the first view, this dial is very, very handsome. It is one of the only dials that I have seen in Submariner Homages that is not sunburst. This dial is matte, and that is very refreshing, but I believe that it looks wonderful like this. So the indices are a homage of the indices of the maxi dial Rolex Submariner, and these hold a very nice amount of lume, and they did win against the Saint Martin. Let me remind you, maybe not in initial burst, but in longevity, which was a big surprise. They are well made, though you do see the occasional particle and the occasional scratch here and there, if you look on the highest macro. On top of the dial, you have got the Cronos hourglass, and beneath you have the Cronos brand lettering, and at the bottom of the dial you have got an automatic 200 meters, 660 feet. The writing is very good, even when you look at it through a macro lens. One of the big changes from the previous versions of these Water Ghosts is the fact that the Dated 3 does not have the frame anymore, and that is a very, very good thing, and they even advertise it on their offerings now. That frame was plain ugly, so I am glad they did that. That is something that had to be done. The date comes courtesy of the PT5000 movement, so really good there. Alright, there's a rehot, and the rehot is just brushed and there is no markings on it whatsoever. Let's go to the bezel insert now. And the bezel insert, in this version it is not loomed yet, but I see that in the newest versions they propose a loomed version, so I don't know how that is. I like having loom bezels, it's very interesting, but I will just review these with no loom for now. So all the markings of the bezel copy the same layout as the ones on the Rolex Submariner, of course. You've got a graduated track up to 15 seconds with a triangle holding a loom pip, and you've got all the markings 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50. The bezel is of course ceramic, and it looks to be pretty high quality. The rotating bezel is pretty good quality. There's a little bit of backplay, sadly, not too much though, and you do feel that this is quality. It does feel pretty good, and it's pretty easy to turn, much easier than, let's say, a Saint Martin or whatever. It would be more like a Seiko, let's say. Okay, the hands are your typical Submariner maxi hands as well. And here, like the indices, they do show some particles and some scratching at really high macro, but nothing that you can see to the naked eye, so it's pretty good. Let's go to the case now, and the case emulates the super case from Rolex. You will find those very thick lugs in here. The top of the lugs are brushed and the sides of the watch are polished. Brushing and polishing are very well made, especially that vertical brushing. If you look at macro, you can see that it is very, very well made. So no complaints here from my part. You go to the crown is signed with the Cronos hourglass. It is etched in there and it's pretty well signed, even though I'm not a fan of that hourglass symbol. If you flip the watch, you see a sterile caseback, just like the Rolex counterpart, and behind that caseback you have got the PT5000 movement. And the PT5000 movement is a clone of the ETA 2824, so it beats at 28,800 beats per hour, so a higher beats than, let's say, the NH35 or 36 and the Miura 8 series. It should last you 38 to 40 hours after a full wind. It has 25 joules and its accuracy is from -10 to +10. Like I have said before, the PT5000 is a pretty well regarded movement. A few versions of this movement were sent to test at the equivalent, of the German equivalent of the COSC, and they performed within COSC. So that is why this movement is pretty well regarded. There's a little bit of doubt because this movement has only been out for 10 years. Being a clone Chinese movement, there's still a bit of doubts about its reliability, its long-term reliability, and I'm going to be discussing that in a future video, so stay tuned. Let's talk about the bracelet now, and the bracelet is your typical 3-link bracelet, brushed on top and polished on the sides. It is held together by screws, and all the links, including the end links, are solid. So a pretty nice bracelet there, no problem there. The clasp, it's a pretty good clasp. If you open it, you see that all the elements are solid. However, it is not signed, and I wonder, there's brands like Pagani Design and others even cheaper that sign their clasps. Why didn't Cronos sign this clasp? That is weird, and that is a little pet peeve that I had. It didn't cost them anything to sign the clasp, come on. And as you can see, there is no on-the-fly macro adjustment on these clasps, but there is 3 levels of macro adjustment that you can use nonetheless. However, you will need a tool to do that. So all in all, what to think of the new version of this watch? It is better. It is better than the one before it. Cronos have learned from their mistakes. They have done away with that frame around the date. That is a very good idea. And this watch is just plain beautiful. It is a very nice watch, and I will be keeping this one in my collection because it is so nice, and because, let's be honest, I'm never going to be able to afford a Rolex Smurf, so this one will do the trick very well. I would have liked them to be able to align the Cyclops better. It is still a bit misaligned, as you have seen in the pictures, and that is just a bit enraging. And I would love them to sign the clasp, that would be the least of things, and to reduce that end link to end link. 54 is too big for most wrists, and even big wristed guys prefer, I believe, smaller end links to end links. A 51 would be amazing. So as you have seen, a watch that is still not as good as the Saint Martin Water Ghost, but that is getting better, it is getting there. Price-wise, it has come down to around 188 euros, so that is good. It's still more expensive than the Saint Martin Water Ghost, but it has come to a very reasonable price for what they're offering, especially movement-wise. So a pretty compelling argument here from Cronos, one that I would recommend, especially on its blue version, because, as I told you, it does look very nice. So thank you guys for having watched the video. Stay tuned for many more reviews that are coming. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll be seeing you very soon. Goodbye.